Hi, this is Bonnie Jo Laflin, author of the book In a League of Her Own, and I'm going one-on-one with ADC partners.
Hey there, this is Dave Almy of ADC Partners, and welcome to this latest episode of the One-on-One Sports Business Conversations podcast. Thanks for being here. Quick reminder, you can always find past episodes at adcpartners.com/podcast. Also, if you have the time or inclination to rate or review the show, that'd be awesome. Very much appreciated. Now look, I hate to say this, but this episode's guest is probably going to make you feel like a slacker. In fairness, though, Bonnie Jo Laflin can make just about anybody feel that way. Santa Claus on Christmas Eve looks like a lay-a-bout compared to Bonnie Jo. We'll get into her many roles during our chat, but I will say that the first and still only female NBA scout recently added another experience to her already poly-hyphenated career, that of author. Bonnie Jo's new book, In a League of Her Own, is a testament to the many female firsts in sports and sports business. In it, she features insights and interviews with iconic figures like Billie Jean King, Danica Patrick, and Jackie Joyner Kersee. In our conversation, we talk about Bonnie Jo's remarkable sports journey, the common threads she saw in the women she interviewed for her book, and even what she learned about herself while writing it. We'll also find out if she's a ninja. Her answer probably won't surprise you. Thanks again for listening, and hope you enjoy my conversation with Bonnie Jo Laflin, author of In a League of Her Own. I think we got to start with a quick review of your resume, right? I'm going to read a few things off just to make sure I've got at least the bulk of it down. All right, here we go. We got barrel racer, model, cheerleader, basketball scout, team general manager, disc jockey, actress, talk show host, philanthropist. Did I leave anything out?
I think you got it all.
I mean, I'm a little out of breath from reading all that stuff. So as you reflect on those roles, and I mean, obviously, each one brings a little bit to your table as you went through with the learnings, what to do, how not to do, those kinds of things. Did any of them stand out in particular as being more or less instrumental in shaping who you are today? That's a lot of roles.
Yeah, I think probably the scouting, being the first female to scout in the NBA. And during that time, it was a lot of trials and tribulations and, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, trying to fit in, trying to figure out who I was. I knew my basketball. I knew how to break down the triangle offense. I knew all of that, but I was the only female. So I was trying to be one of the boys and putting my hair up in a cap and wearing baggy Jordan sweats and trying to just, fit in being like, one of the boys. And so I think that took a while for me to kind of be comfortable in my own skin. B. Shaw, who was the assistant coach at the time, he was like, stop trying to act like us. You're trying to walk and talk like us. Like, just be you. Like, and that was kind of a trivial point in my career or my life, I should say, because I was like, oh, okay, I can be me, and instead, I think I was trying to be someone else. And I think looking back, I think that really built the person who I am.
It's a difficult thing, right, to have, but such a relief, I would think, right? You'd think of like, okay, I've got to try to become someone else in order to do this job, but I'm really now getting feedback that says, look, we didn't bring you on board to be someone else. We brought you on board to be you. I mean, I
Right.
imagine that's sort of like the golden gates getting thrown open as far as like being on understanding it. But that transition from, because you were on the entertainment side of sports for a long time, and then you did move over to working in a front office. I mean, how did that transition take place? What was the moment when somebody tapped you on the shoulder and said, we really like you to fill this role? And then what were some of those initial reactions to
Well, I
being
wasn't actually working in entertainment at the time. I was actually the pre and post game
okay?
host for the Lakers. So it was a very easy, seamless kind of fit because I was already interviewing the players. I was already, there in the building doing the pre and post game for KCBS, which is our flagship for the Lakers. So they saw that I knew talent. They knew I could break down, like I said, the offense. They knew that I had an eye for talent. They knew that I knew what Phil wanted. Phil knew that I knew what he wanted when it came to big guards, basketball IQ, all that. So that kind of came easy. It was more of the, that first year, like I didn't get paid. I was still on air as well as scouting. And so kind of to prove myself from there to try to figure, if there's something I was going to be good at, and if they thought I was going to be good at it. So they liked my scouting reports, and then from there, it was a 5-year deal. 5-year deal. I ended up being with the Lakers for 13 seasons. So yes, of course, I had the entertainment background, but I was actually covering the Lakers.
So really we're able to give that sense of I know what I'm talking about because of the acumen you developed in media, working with the players, evaluating the players, diving into what they had. Like you said, being able to break down the triangle offense, which I think makes you one of 4 people on the planet who can actually do
So
that.
me and Tex Winterfill and maybe Bill Burke and
you guys,
Kobe and
you
Kobe.
guys
I mean, there were so many players that, I mean, I'm sure you know, there were a lot of players that didn't end up fitting well with the Lakers because they couldn't run the triangle. Then you look at a Luke Walton, who Luke's going to kill me by saying this, but I don't know how long of a career he would have had if he didn't have the triangle. You know what I mean? Because it really, that system worked for him. A run and gun would have never worked for Luke, or D Fish or whatever. So I think it took a certain type of player. That's why you saw some of these, players that were kind of, not the player you would have thought, the Ron Harper. Do you know what I mean? They were not the big stars. You had your stars, in the paint, and obviously Kobe and stuff, but it wasn't like some of the guys you look in these teams and who won a championship with us. You would look and go, oh yeah, I remember him. But you know what I mean? It was kind of the crafty the veteran, the player coach type of guy that was out there on the court. So it made it kind of unique because of the triangle.
It's one of those crazy things about, and one of the biggest challenges I think of for coaches and players is if you're a coach, do you create an offense to fit the talent that you have, or do you go out and try to find the talent for the offense that you want to run? And obviously, the Lakers at that period of time, the triangle offense was the defining piece of it, and it worked most of the time for some of the players. So you really do have to find those guys on the floor with the IQ. And I'm assuming that was one of the things that you were out there looking for specifically as, again, the first and still only woman scout in the NBA.
Yeah, it was something that Phil was very adamant. If I was to go scout for another team, it would have been completely different, right? But that run and gun, most of the teams were running, at the time, it's completely different what Phil wanted. So, we may look at a guy, and also he loved big guards. If you were a small guard, he didn't care, like, how. Of course, an undersized guard, that's kind of an obvious, but he liked really, really big guards, especially at the point bringing up the ball. But it was funny because he wanted that high basketball IQ. And so it did take took a while for us to figure out, like, you know what I mean? It's like who that was, like.
So what you're saying is the 5'11" guy who can't jump and has really been terrible at basketball is probably not on his radar at any given time, is what you're probably telling me right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'll tell you, I'm going to take that knife out of my chest, and then we're going to move on to, let's talk about the book. The book is In a League of Her Own. And, I'm assuming the experience of being the first female scout, and only still to this day, in the NBA is what led you to write the book, right? You're blazing a pretty significant path for women in sports. And I'm wondering what was the moment that led you to go, you know what, this needs to be a book.
I think it was more just the fact that there wasn't a book, David, out there that encompassed all the females that have paved the way, that have been the trailblazers, that had been the pioneers, and there wasn't there was books that like the individuals have written, but not a book where I want the younger generation to be able to, young females, to see this and be like, okay, there's a space for me, maybe not necessarily as an athlete, but maybe as a front office, maybe as a scout, maybe as a ref and whatever that may be. And it was, it wasn't out there. And so they didn't, like, for me, like when I was a scout, there wasn't someone for me to look up to,
No manual.
Yeah.
No.
And now there was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not necessarily can be an athlete, but there's so many other ways that I can be, in sports, and not necessarily even just like as a cheerleader or as a sportscaster, reporter, host, whatever that is. It was, there's so many different layers, and you're seeing how there's so many different women now, referees, umpires. I mean, you name it, front office, Kim Ding being the first female to be, a GM for the Dodgers and then go over to the Marlins. So it was pretty crazy to see, how many different facets of women that are in sports now and what that looks like. And so that was my why.
And really being motivated to chronicle some of this, because the book is a celebration of other female firsts, and you get to talk to and you interview for the book. I mean, some of the biggest names, not just female names in sports, some of the biggest names in sports. I mean, you got Billie Jean King is in the book, Mary Lou Retton.
Yeah, Danica Patrick and Layla Ali and Jackie Joyner Kersee. There were so many women that were kind of the the legends, I should say, so to speak. Like, and when I first was, got the book deal, I was like, okay, if I don't have Billie Jean King, then I don't have a book. Like, so
What was it
I,
like reaching out to her? Was it a difficult ask?
yeah, it was because of her schedule, and I only had
Yeah.
9 months to write this book, so it wasn't like I had long time. 9 months seems long. It's not long when you're writing a book
No.
and 20 chapters, and it's a lot. Because I had to do a Zoom. Well, first of all, try to set up the interview, then do a Zoom, then transcribe, then, start to formulate this chapter, then rewrite, then get these pictures from the women, make sure they sign off on it, make sure, like so many things. Oh, do I like the cover? Then get all the endorsements for all the people on the back of my book. And so it was just a lot. Like it was more than I than I thought that when I first took that on, because I'm
I'm going to write a
obviously,
book and it's going to be so
yeah, it's
easy.
going to be easy. And like, and while I'm working as well and running my charity and everything else, it was just, it was tough, but it was rewarding in the end, just because so many publishers had said no to the book
Mm.
because they wanted me to do a tell-all book, because some of those memoirs are it's just exposing other people's lives. And that's not something that I would do, especially with the athletes that I work with. Those are like dear friends of mine. So that was never in the cards. Where I wanted something empowering and aspiring, all of that. And the publishers were like, no, we don't really.
And that wasn't what motivated you to consider taking on the effort of writing a book to begin with, right? They were looking for something completely different, but you really wanted to dive into an experience that you had had as a first and start to
Right.
get to share some of those stories. And the book does recount obstacles,
Yeah,
challenges.
absolutely. Of course. And that's what I was trying to tell her. That I was like, yeah, there are a lot of struggles. It's not going to be, TMZ worthy, but, there's still going to be, there's still a lot of struggles, because I've been asked about writing my own book for at least 15 years now,
Mhm.
since I was with the Lakers, and the teams that I was with were so polarizing, with the
Mhm.
Cowboys, during the Troy Aikman, Jerry Jones, Michael Irvin days, obviously then with the Lakers with Kobe and
Yeah.
Shaq and everything, and me being on
Lightning
the road.
rods, one and all.
Yeah, me being on the road all the time. I was the only female that was on the road with the Lakers during all that time. So it's like they knew that I knew things. Of course I did, but I would never,
You're
never,
going to
ever.
break that all right here on this
Yeah.
podcast. I'm quite sure that's about to happen right now. We're going to
Right.
dive into your history with the teams. But
So
yeah, I appreciate that too, right? Because it does, those stories, while I'm sure are compelling and fascinating for a certain group of people, it's just not what you wanted to write. And is this book then an opportunity for you to have gone through the writing process, developed the book, and done all those things? Do you start to look more inwardly now about maybe doing something more autobiographical? Easy for me to say.
yeah, no, never. I'll never do a book like
You
that.
never do
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm going to do a second book. I would like to do a second book so I can include the Caitlin Clarks and Becky Hammond and Katie Ledecky, who'll probably kill it in Olympics coming up in July in
Mm,
Paris. Like all those different women that I didn't get to put in my book. And I really want to do a children's book, but no, I'll never do a tell-all book. I
yeah, okay.
mean, you could offer me millions of dollars. I mean, I have integrity.
All right, I'm looking around here for the million. I don't have it on the desk right now, but I think that also I'm wondering about the stories that you did hear in researching the book, right? Because yes, there are a great many challenges that faced by your subject, but there's also some really heartening stories about the incredible support that people received along the way in their journeys. I'm wondering which stories and experiences that you heard really stood out to you as being, wow, it's a fascinating and compelling piece. And so glad I've got that as part of the pages of this book.
Yeah, I think there were so many. I think the one that stands out was Danica Patrick, who's, we all know her as very stoic, little thing, but she's, pretty stoic, very pretty intense, obviously, when she was driving. But she actually, I was interviewing her and she was kind of just giving me these like very short answers, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm not even gonna be able to use this, right? Because she's not giving me much. And then I started to ask her about her father,
Mm.
and then started to ask her, because her father was the first one to like build her go-kart and for her to first, get started, and then go into her being a role model to these little girls who now say that there's a space for them, in race car driving, NASCAR, Indy, whatever it may be. And we talked about that and her being proud, and then she started crying, and I was like, oh yes, like now I'm Barbara Walters. So I was like super like excited because I was, that she
I made her
actually,
cry.
yeah, you know what I mean? But that was, but I love that because it showed that, she was like, I never realized while I was in the sport how much of an impact I was setting for these young women. And that now looking back, when I've got the young girls, because now she's in media, her coming in, covering the races, having these little girls like ask her about, there's, thank you, I want to be a race car driver like you. And her being that role model, she said maybe she would have made different decisions or whatever. She just didn't even think about it. And a lot of the women said that. They're like, well, we didn't think of ourselves being a role model. We just were doing what we loved and being passionate about it. And some of them said, I didn't really want to be a role model. I just, you know what I mean? So it's like, and we hear that all the time from professional athletes. Like, I'm a professional athlete. Like,
The
I
Charles
want to go to a
Barkley thing.
party. Yeah, if I want to party and do whatever, like go ahead. Like I'm not trying to be a role model, because sometimes your role models, you meet them, they say don't meet your heroes, right? So it's like that, the whole thing of like these women talked about that, and then also about the sacrifices, like being a female, whether it's not having a family or marriage is not working out, or all of us kind of had that where we sacrifice, and everything was our career, everything was just that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're married to the game, married to your career. And I think that was the biggest parallel to all of us, was the sacrifices.
Did some of the people that you spoke to find this to be a cathartic experience in some way? You talk about Danica thinking about that from the standpoint of a role of her father and not really thinking of herself as a role model. Did that happen frequently throughout your conversations?
Mary Lou Retton, because she was actually unhealthy during
Yeah,
that time.
right.
And it was not during this last battle that she had with pneumonia. This was when she had another horrible incident that was going on with this infection. And so
Mm.
I think she was just, first of all, she was so proud to be in the book. And then secondly, that she was kind of reminiscing of her career and her life. And, especially when you're sick or something's going on, I think she was thinking, oh, this legacy that I've left. And maybe do people know who I was? Because she's like, I'm so shocked you'd have me in it. It's like Mary Lou Retton. I mean, she was on my Wheaties box. Like I told my dad, you can't eat that Wheaties because I need to
Yeah.
keep that
Keep
box.
that sealed.
Yeah. And so all of those different things that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted these women that maybe didn't have the social media, or the younger generation does not know of them, because Mary Lou Retton, that was America's sweetheart. I mean, she was at that time, if you remember, David, she was everything,
She
Mary Lou
was
was everything.
everything. She
And
was
I
everything
remember,
and everywhere.
yeah, and I remember her and I really connected because I looked up to Nadia Comaneci, because I loved Nadia when I was growing up, and watching her moving and watching her transition from Romania to US, and her struggles and her feeling to fit in and her weight issues and all of that. And she looked up to Nadia, so we
Mm.
spoke about that. But there's so many women in my book that I call like my hidden gems, like Julie Crone, who's the first female to win a Breeders' Cup,
Mm.
jockey. So the first barrel racer, Martha Josie, to be in the NFR. I wanted Melissa Stockwell is another one, who's the first female who was injured in the Iraq War, ended up being a Paralympian in the Paralympics, and won 2 gold medals in swimming. And she was the first female to lose her leg in Iraq. So there's so many women that I don't think people knew
Yeah,
about.
you scratch the surface a little
Yeah,
bit.
and it was important for me to like kind of like fit all these different demographics and facets, not just the ones that everyone knows about, because I think feel like their story's been told a little bit more. So it was definitely those hidden gems. I think I'm I guess more proud of.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you are able to detect any themes or commonalities between these women who became firsts. Is there something about them that you feel like binds them together in their ability to have persevered in the face of people saying no or go away or things like that? What are the
Yeah,
common themes you
all
see?
of us. First of all, our work ethic is,
Yeah.
just like a code. You're the first one to get there to the gym, the last one to leave, right? So I think work ethic, which I believe is lost in this younger generation, work ethic, is something that's so important. And I don't think you grow into that. I think it's kind of just instilled in you right out of the womb. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's just in your DNA. So all of us had this crazy work ethic still to this day. And secondly, I think it was to prove people wrong. There's some people who've
Mm.
got thick skin and can, get through that. And there's some who are like, no, this isn't for me. And all of us were like, oh, you don't think I can do it? Perfect. Watch me. So I think that was all of all of us had that same
I'll
like,
show you. Yeah.
yeah, chip on your shoulder. And that's what Kobe literally, like anytime there was stuff that got me down, he always said, I play with a chip on my shoulder. And, Kobe, MJ, they all played like that, even when they're winning all these championships and the best of the game, best in the world. I remember we just, won a championship against Orlando, and there's Kobe the next day in the gym, hitting jumpers. So it's like that, there's something to be said with that. And I think that is why he told me to have, that fire, because that's going to fuel me and be hungry. And I'm still like that today. It's like maybe even too much, but I think it's something that you either have or you don't.
I think it's interesting too. You point to, and you said it's something about, right? A lot of this is just we're born with. These are innate traits that you come
Yeah.
to the table with. But you were also really fortunate to be around people who were like Kobe, consummate competitors,
Oh yeah.
right? Famous for their competition. So you may have had that internal drive built in there, but perhaps it was also some of these people around you and some of the people around the other women in your book who gave fire to that, who gave it a little bit of extra breath that said, okay, this is actually a really, my competition is actually a really positive quality and saw you through. I mean, from doing, being the first scout to writing the book.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and people may take this wrong, I like to be surrounded by greatness,
Mm,
and that's, and you only will become better if you be around people that are better than you, if that makes any
right.
sense.
No, absolutely.
Otherwise, you can get complacent, and mediocrity is not an option for me. So I like to be around people that are winners, that are constantly accomplishing things. That's the bubble that I keep myself around. And I can't be around slackers, people who are lazy. Like lazy doesn't, I can't, it drives me bonkers. If you're lazy, please get way, way, way far away from me.
For
So
those
I
of you
can't
who
stand
are
that.
only watching or only listening on audio, what you can't see are the eyes burning bright and the hands moving around.
I don't know. There's something about that. Laziness is like a pet peeve of mine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think, and that's just, since, like you said, since a little girl, my dad was an undercover police officer, but he also was doing, security for the Giants and the Niners. And
Mm.
so I had the Roger Craigs and the Ronnie Lotts and the Joe Montanas and the Eddie DeBartolo and the Carmen Policy. And then going, to the Cowboys, being around the Troy Aikmans and the Emmett Smith and the Jerry Jones, all of them who've been mentors and helped me. It's like I saw what they put in, how they were able to achieve that, translate that into championships. And I'm still like that today. Like, I don't want to be around people that don't make me better.
What, in speaking with the subjects of your book and reliving their firsts, I wonder what you learned or realized about your own journey to be a first. Was there something you took away personally from this and being like, gosh, I hadn't really considered that before?
Not really. I think my therapist has kind of told me all the things that I've done wrong and like what I need to do better and balance. But I think a lot of it was just this. I think all of us, the sacrifices, not having balance, I think was a big thing that all of us kind of spoke about, because you do sacrifice so much that, like me and Jane Kennedy, we have a lot of parallel career because of her being in the pageants and being a model, being a dancer, being an actress, then being on, the NFL Today Show on CBS. We both kind of went through that entertainment and
Hmm.
sports and being accepted. And, she was the same as me. Like, you're missing your senior ball, you're missing, junior prom, you're missing homecomings, you're missing, what I mean? You're missing all those things as a
Right.
kid because you are just focused and zoned in, dialed in on your goal. So Jane and
Your
I
eyes
really
are aimed a little
connected.
higher.
Yeah, Jane and I kind of connected because I was not that little girl that was like, oh, I want to have, the white picket fence, the kids. I was like, no, how do I, Dad? I want to own a team at some point. And my dad was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like picking up the sporting thing, because we had the sporting thing when I was growing up, and reading that and
Yeah.
handicapping horses and betting on horses. I mean, I was betting horses when I was 5 years old. That's probably bad, but like
You'll still have to explain
I
that one
was
to me.
I was just different. Like when it came to what I wanted, I didn't want the typical, conventional like family. Like that
Clearly.
was like if that happened, okay. But that was never. And now I have the white picket fence, the dogs, the horses. I just don't have the guy, and that's perfectly fine.
But you do it on your own terms.
Yeah.
I had a chance to speak and do an episode actually with Jennifer Todd, and she was one of the original Title IX litigants.
Yes.
And she said that, she felt like absolutely, right, there has been a complete shift in momentum, right? With the
Mhm.
growth of WNBA, the
Right.
NWSL, Caitlin Clark. I mean, there's definitely good things are happening, but her point is there's still so much work needs to be done. And I'm wondering, based on the interviews that you did for the book, is that the common perception? Is there a sense of what probably should be prioritized to keep that momentum going? What do the subjects of your
Right.
book have to say about
Absolutely.
that?
Well, if you mentioned Caitlin Clark, I mean, I'm more into the women's basketball March Madness Sweet 16 than I am even the men's, even though I'm covering the men's.
You're
It's
not
so
alone.
I mean, women, that I don't know what it is. It's watching the women right now. It's just so exciting. The fundamentals, the way that they run their offenses, they play D. I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
there's
you're
just
you're
something
spot on.
there's something different
It
about
looks like basketball.
Yeah, and it's I love it. I mean, Caitlin Clark, she turns over the ball a lot, I've noticed watching her a lot. But however,
Oh, okay. Oh, here's the breakdown, everybody.
yeah,
Get ready.
but it's, and people are saying she's whining too much because of, she's complaining too much because of her status. But it is funny to see though that you even care about that. Do you know what I mean? When
I
would we
know we're
ever
talking
talk
about
about
women's basketball, right? Yeah.
a women's college basketball player turning over the ball or complaining? None of us would even care, right? So now seeing that, I hope that can translate into the WNBA because the WNBA still kind of you know what I mean? There's still that lackluster. You
It's
love
getting
college
there.
basketball, but
Yeah.
WNBA, no. It's like I watch a lot of Las Vegas Aces just because you saw Becky Hammon be able to win that championship, and that was fun. But there's still something there to show, though. Look at Caitlin Clark. I mean, she's probably the most, I don't know, one of the most popular athletes in the world right now. People just care so much about her, which I think shows that there is a need for to celebrate them and to highlight the women. And yes, we have a long ways to go. There's so many strides that we need to make. So, but there's big strides that we're making just by seeing what's going on with Caitlin Clark. I know that's going to happen as well during the Olympics. Like I mentioned, Katie Ledecky. People always talk about Michael Phelps. It's like she blows him away. You know what I mean? So I think there's going to be, a lot more. There's still things that set us back. Like there's a reporter, I don't want to mention her name, but she spoke about how she doesn't, when she was doing any of her sidelines, she wouldn't speak to the coaches because they wouldn't have time to talk to her. So she'd make up her reports. Now, stuff like that is what sets us way back. Even if that's true, like, don't say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you
No
see
journey
women,
is linear.
yeah, and then you see women who are in pressers and they're asking a question about how do you feel if the weather's going to affect the game and the game's in a dome, right? So it's like you can't. It's like if a man asked that, it wouldn't even be there would be nothing. But since women are so under a microscope and scrutiny that you have to be so careful, while you have to over research, over prepare, over know exactly what you're talking about because then you look at the comments, David. All it says is this is why females shouldn't have credentials. This is why females we don't need a sideline reporter. This is like so it's like
The
mispronouncing a
microscope is
name.
so intense.
Yeah, like when I cover baseball, like I'm like going crazy making sure like new player just got pulled out from AAA. How do I say his last name? Because if I say it wrong, I'm screwed. So then I'm, asking the player like, how do you?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you can call me either one. I'm like, no. What does your mama call you? How does your mama say your name? He's like, oh, and I'm like, and he's like, okay. I'm like, that's how I'm going to
You're
call
doing
you.
the Laflin mama test.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, I don't care. You can call me, whatever. And I'm like, no. What does your mama call you? Because that's how it should be pronounced, and that's how I'm going to pronounce your name. But it's just funny how we have to over analyze everything we do because of that. But so she's right. We've got big strides, and there's, right now I feel like is the most I've ever seen the empowerment. But there's also, you see, like it's Women's History Month, right? And you see these men who are still saying, when is this month over? Oh my God, I can't stand this. And and some of the stuff they say is funny. Like, I don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. It's like this
Yeah, yeah.
month feels
You
like it's
laugh.
lasting.
You laugh at the memes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy who said this month feels like it's lasting forever. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, I feel like we are getting a lot of people who are noticing that this is something that we should be talking about. But I want to get to a point where it's not like, oh, we're checking off a box. Let's give this female this position because we need to have a female. We need to
Right.
have this minority female in here, whatever it may look like. No, this is the best person for
Yeah.
the job because
So
they're
it's no longer
talented.
special.
Exactly. That's the
It
thing.
just is.
And I may be different when it comes to that, but that's what I want. I want it to be where she's the most talented, not because we need her for PR or we need this
Yeah.
person because it's a check in the box sort of thing.
So as we wrap up or get close to wrapping up, the book is in a league of her own, and I'm
Yes.
wondering, Bonnie Jill
And I
Laflin.
have it.
It has it right there. It
Yes.
is. This book.
Yes.
It's a distinctive purple hue on the
Yeah,
cover,
and if
so you
people
can.
thought it was Lakers, and my publisher didn't really do the Lakers, it was just happened to be that, and then I'm like, all right, we'll just
All
keep
right.
it.
Well, we'll run with it. All right.
Right.
Whatever. All right. But I'm wondering what advice you have for women who are beginning their own sports business journey. Right. I think you probably heard a lot of different pieces from a lot of different people. What advice do you want to deliver to people who are listening to this and maybe just getting rolling?
I think the biggest thing is that, you have a goal of what you want to do in sports, right? You have a role you want, duties you want. You got to first just break in, like get in. So get in the building. So being at a network, being at a sports agency, being with a team, and maybe you're in ticket sales. I don't know. Maybe you're whatever, stadium operations, but getting in there, learning all the different sides of the business side of the sports, the basketball, football operations side, learning game operations, all of it, because you may like realize, oh, this is actually what I want to do. Then you're networking. We all know how important networking is. You're meeting people, you're figuring it out, and then you're making also, you're kind of like going on this journey where you can figure out what you want to do and putting that work ethic in and putting that time in. And I think that's so important, and doing like you're paying your dues, so to speak. But really, getting to know everyone there, and then you can also kind of build on that. Plus, if you want longevity in sports, like I think the reason I've had longevity is because I can pivot. I can constantly pivot. When it comes to media, I can write, I can produce, I can shoot, I can edit, and I'm on-air talent. I think that's important. And the same thing when I was scouting, I also was able to like look through contracts and go through the CBA and cut players. And I mean, there was times where I had to run a practice. I'm like, I don't know how to run a practice. They're like, oh, coaches.
But you're one of the only people who understands the triangle offense.
Yeah, and so it's funny, like how this is with the G League team, with the G League team now. But it was so funny that now I feel like that's why I've been able to stay, relevant and stay in sports, because we know how tough it is, because I can do so many different things, and don't ever think that you're too big that you can't do certain things. You know what I mean? I think that kind of for me, having a lot of layers, like in the beginning, you mentioned all things I've done, because I think it's important to have a lot of layers. I think it's important to not just be one dimensional. I mean, they say that with athletes. For little kids, don't just have them in baseball, have them in football, have them in track, have them in, you know what I mean? So I think it's important that all the different things I've done has kind of made me who I am. And it has made me to be able to be successful in different areas of, sports.
And with Bonnie Jo Laflin, she's the author of In a League of Her Own. Thanks so much for the time, Bonnie Jo. And I'm going to let you go, but I gotta, before I let you go. All right, I gotta put you into the lightning round.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so just a couple more questions, very quick. First thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
All right, let's do this thing. Okay, when you were scouting for the Lakers, who's the one player you wish people had listened to you about?
Oh gosh, I have a long list.
First one that pops to mind. First one that pops to mind. No long lists. It's the lightning round.
Well, Jordan Farmar, we ended up scouting him, but no one wanted him. And so we ended up getting him on our team, but no one wanted him at the time. It was crazy. Like,
right, so you still shake your fist a little bit about that.
Yeah.
All right. So as discussed, barrel racer, model, cheerleader, basketball scout, team jingle drummer, DJ, actress, talent show host, philanthropist. When will you add ninja to the list?
Ninja. I am a ninja. I just don't talk about that.
That's probably for the best.
Happily, yeah, I'm a ninja as well, because I feel like I'm better than like the FBI or CIA. There's nothing I can't find out.
All right, okay. So I just got a little more nervous about this conversation. All right, you've cheered for the 49ers, Cowboys, and Warriors, right? Which team outfit was the biggest pain in the neck to perform in?
Probably the Dallas Cowboys, just because the outfit, as you know, is so iconic, so legendary, and we had to have it steamed a certain way. It had to be washed a certain way. It had to be washed with certain detergent. It was
they picked the detergent.
Oh yeah, and the way you hung it, and the way you had to do your bow in the front, and oh my gosh, it's like it was a whole.
There's a manual. There's a manual.
Yeah, and making sure like the stars were. Anyway, it was like it wasn't just putting it on. It was like you had to have all these things before you put it on. Yeah,
I had no idea. All right, last one. Where can people learn more about your charity, Hounds and Heroes?
Yeah, Hounds, Heroes, and Horses. We added horses now.
Okay, sorry.
Houndsandheroes.com. What it is we rescue dogs who otherwise would be euthanized, and then we pair them up with wounded warriors that are suffering from TBI, PTSD, amputees, and have them be service or therapy dogs. And also now we do that with equine therapy retreats for the horses that I've saved off the track thoroughbreds and from horses from slaughter. And we do equine therapy retreats for wounded warriors, and also disabled children and children of fallen soldiers as well.
Okay. That URL one more time.
Oh, houndsandheroes.com. And also all of our social media is at Hounds and Heroes.
Bonnie Jo Laflin, thanks so much for spending the time.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the One-on-One Sports Business Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed it, we always appreciate a subscribe, share, comment, or like. And don't forget, you can always find past episodes at abcpartners.com/podcast. This podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Dave Almy. And theme music was composed by Scott Holmes.